Go.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Stand for Something series from the YMCA of Metropolitan Detroit. I will be your host for the morning. My name is Margaret Edwardowski, and I'm the Executive Director of Y Arts, which is the Arts and Humanities branch of the YMCA. Today is a very special day because we are going to commemorate Mental Health Awareness Month, which of course is the month that we're in, which is May. We have assembled an excellent panel of some really great people to talk about this subject. And as always, this is a community conversation that we're excited to share with you as part of our diversity, inclusion, equity, and global portion of the YMCA, where we really like to get these kinds of topics together for people to consider and hear more about and learn about. So this is always an exciting event for us to be able to share. So thank you for joining us today, or if you are watching after the fact, thank you for taking the time to watch. And please do feel free to share your thoughts in the comments or reach out to us with your portion of this conversation. So the goal of this community conversation today is to provide our community members an understanding of how mental health care is different across the generations, and also build an awareness of the relationship between an individual's lived experience, their trauma, and their mental well-being, and also to share mental health resources. So hopefully that you will get all of that out of today's presentation. So let's get started. I would like to introduce our wonderful panel to you, and then we will get to all that they have to share. So I'm going to start off with Nikki O'Donnell. Nikki serves as the executive director of Words of Hope for Life. She is a psychologist with a fireball of energy focused on creating big change in mental health. Named Oakland County's top 40 under 40, Nikki has reimagined how mental wellness skills and knowledge are integrated into our culture, ensuring generational impacts. Welcome, Nikki. Thank you so much for being on our panel today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And thank you for coordinating your lovely hair with the background.
The background, right?
Today. Yes,
totally.
I'm glad we called each other for that one. Let's bring on the rest of our panel and then we'll get chatting. I'm really, really excited to have this guest with us today because I had the great fortune to work beside her for many years here in the YMCA. She is a delight to talk to be around, and also has a lot of knowledge on this subject to share. So Melanie Porch Donahue, she did provide mental health support with Easter Seals of Southeast Michigan for over 10 years. And she's a senior minister at the Westside Unity Church, as well as a behavioral health specialist for Detroit Employment Solutions Corporation, also known as DESC. Welcome, Melanie. Thank you so much for being with us today. Oh, I don't think we can hear you.
I didn't say anything. Thank you. I just waved.
I was like, you're always checking on mute for these things, you know. Lovely to have you with us. Thank you so much for taking the time. Our third panelist is a good YMCA friend of ours, and I'm excited to have her here. So our Regional Behavior and Mental Health Director, Lauren Savage, is joining us today.
Hello. Thanks,
Hi,
Margaret.
Lauren. Thanks for being here. It's great to have you.
Great to be here.
And she's sort of my internal expert on the subject, and I have learned a whole lot, both in trainings and in day-to-day conversations with her on this subject. So let's get started. We're just going to throw some initial questions out there. And for those of you that are watching, as I said, this is a community conversation. So we're going to get as much insight from all of our panelists as we can, and just have a nice chat on this important topic. So as we know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, which brings us here today. Why is mental health awareness important to you? Melanie, why don't you start us off?
Well, for me, health in general is important. So we have heart health, we have breast cancer awareness. Mental health is a part of health. And so we want us to be as well as we can be in every realm, like of our health period. And so mental health is important, especially after COVID. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but just to have good health. A lot of times we say mental health when someone's struggling with it, but mental health is health. We just want to make sure that we're well in what we're doing. So yeah, it's important to have that month like any other month because it's health. Yeah.
Excellent. Nikki, you want to chime in on this one?
Yeah. So I really think of mental health as kind of the human condition, right? The experience, what's it like to be a human, and interact with others. And we each come from such different backgrounds and challenges. But the thing that unites us all is that we're all having the same experience. And so mental health for me is a lot of how do we connect in a way that supports ourselves in our experience, but then everybody else at the same time, which also, kind of circular impacts everybody. But I really think of that as, having the human experience and the challenges that go with that, and mental health just really being another aspect to a muscle that we grow that helps us have, a really full experience and really do the things that we want to do, the passions, the things that make us unique, and the things that we can only bring, to our communities.
Excellent. Lauren, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just echo everything that Melanie and Nikki already said. I mean, they are brilliant in this realm, and I'm lucky to be here with them. I think for me, mental health awareness really came important to me as an individual person when I was a teenager, but more so community focused when I started working at the YMCA. Initially, when I started working at the YMCA myself, I thought that I wanted to be a music teacher. And quickly just seeing the needs of our campers and our students in our programs and the youth and families, that changed the trajectory of my entire life. So I think the YMCA is definitely an informal support when it comes to mental health, but we're fortunate that we are focusing more on that aspect to support our community holistically. So yeah, that along with everything Melanie and Nikki said.
Do you think
What a
really,
wonderful, if I could say, what a wonderful,
Yeah.
you said, I thought I wanted to be a music teacher. You still, here's the thing about mental health. It's not either or, it's everything and.
Right.
So I'm a music teacher and I'm a teacher and I'm a dancer and I'm an art. You get to incorporate all of those wonderful things. And that's the cool thing, because sitting down just talking to people sometimes doesn't feel good. But listening to music and expressing yourself in that way, you're all of that. So that's amazing. Yes.
Yeah.
Funny
Well,
you say
and to-
that. Oh, sorry,
ahead.
Lauren.
No, go ahead.
I wanted to, it's funny. Back when I first started my career, I was working at a really huge health system, and it's kind of that along the same line that we're talking about how, I was in other fields and really just like felt this pull and this need. I was doing a wellness program at the YMCA in Farmington way back when I was little tiny baby Nikki therapist, and it was my first introduction to what like community connection could look like, and it was incredible. I think that for historically, in the nonprofit that I run, we kind of have a very similar mission is like, how do we make these connections? I was a kid who didn't have that. I had parents who were struggling with substance abuse and mental illness, and the struggle there was for a kid is I just needed one other adult, just one, to have some kind of interest or hope in me. And now being a therapist and working in this world, I understand that is such a preventative factor. A kid just needs one person, just one outside of their family that has some care and concern for their well-being. In mental health, those are some of the unique factors I think that sort of pull in. So I had the same experience, Lauren. I was like, I want to do more of this, right? And then I went on and,
for someone just to be able,
but it was foundational.
Yeah, for someone to be able to see you. I say that all the time to my young people when they're acting out. I see Miss Melanie, I see you.
Yeah.
You understand, without filters, without sparkly eyes and all that. I see you. That means everything. Like you said, just one person to be able to say, I see you just the way you are. You don't have to do all that. We don't have to mask and do all of that. I see. I love heart-to-heart connections because I see you. I feel you. You don't have to do all those things to get our attention. We know that you are here. You belong and you're present. So
what I love about all of these things that all of you are saying is, to bring it back around to our organization, one of the things that, the Y's been in Detroit for like 170 years. So one of the things that we have always prided ourselves in is seeing a community need and filling it. And both of your stories, all of your stories have highlighted exactly that, but on the exact ground level with the participants, right? I see that you need support in the mental health arena. I'm inspired to dedicate my life to it, right? Like that, what an impact. That's incredible.
Yeah, really. And it's totally selfish too, because
sorry.
I get a ton out of it. Right.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's unique. You guys probably saw this post 2020, it's the first time that people in a helping profession were experiencing the same thing as everybody else. And all of a sudden there's like, we have the same need of connection and support and, all of these things. So I say that all of the time, like, wow, as much as I give, I get twice as much back. I'm creating a community. I've got kiddos, an 11 and a 6-year-old, and I want that for them. I don't want to do it all. And it's sort of that, like, it takes a village, but sort of takes that meaning to the next level. If I don't have answers, I can find someone who does. I don't have to do it all. And I think that's like a huge relief. When it comes to like how we navigate and find support, and the why does that. Awesome.
I was saying, Margaret, you're never going to get to your questions next because but I was a counselor,
delighted.
a counselor here at the Y for years. And so things as simple as the climbing ball, that right there for someone who's never, you're like, I can't do that. And then when they get to the top, even just to take a few steps and they get further than they were, it's like they look down, they're like, I did this. That's important. And then we're now, encouraging. We've done the camps and the ropes. The YMCA has been, both of my babies were Y babies. So I get, what I'm saying? It's amazing because we get to be here. What is the book called? Yes, in the Land of No. Yes, you can do that. Yep, you might fall down a little bit, but guess what? We'll get back up. We just laugh and cheer you on. And that means what you said, Nikki, just one person. But if you got a whole room of people doing it, it's like, this is amazing. This is some good stuff. So.
And it creates a container. I talk about this all the time, but I think that creating containers for healthy mental health to develop is so critical. And so like, that's a really good example. It's create a container with the right ingredients, because it can't come from the outside. It's got to come from the inside. Yeah. But I see this right when you said rock wall, I was like, oh my gosh, my 6-year-old, I've got an 11-year-old and he's out there and he's, he's like me, he wants to talk to everybody. And my daughter is not like that. So she needed a different kind of support. And we started with things like, she was doing parkour, but she did this rock wall and her confidence soared. It's nothing we could have given her, but there was a container built in a community and all I had to do was access it. So I love that we're talking about this, and hopefully we can share some value that makes people think like, ooh, maybe I will, check that out. Or, this is for everybody. It's not just for anybody, someone struggling. Like, no, my goodness, we need everybody.
Right. I love the notion of one kid can change, or one adult outside of the parents can change a child's life. That is a massive theme that I use personally when we do summer camp training. So the Y Metro Detroit annually hosts a massive summer camp training where we bring all of our camp staff together in one setting. So there's hundreds of people there that most of them are not quite sure what they're getting themselves into. And as someone who is in that space as well, we make sure to point out, like, this is an open environment and your job this summer is to positively impact one kid. So when you look at the ripple effect of that, there's hundreds of people there. So that's hundreds of kids that they're impacting. And 9 times out of 10, they're impacting more than one kid positively. And then that just goes back to our theme of belonging. So we also talk about how there's 4 components that folks need to feel in order to have that sense of belonging. It's seen, connected, supported, and proud. So that's just a really great way for us to introduce those topics and then to use those activities of rock wall, swimming, maybe field trips, all of the things that are challenging but supported to help folks feel like they belong at the Y.
You create the third place. I know that Lauren, I talk about this, but like everyone needs a third place, Yes. And so this is like life-changing, I think, for me as a mom, but even as adults, we need 3 places to feel seen. Mm-hmm. Right. And to feel like we can grow and be ourselves. We can let our guard down. So, perhaps it's home, right? Maybe it's school or work, and then you need a third place. And so that's where I think that's what we're really focusing on, is like that container. And the cool part about organizations within communities like the Y, I mean, each community I did a bunch of research with Oakland County in different parts of Oakland County together, information about substance use and opioids. And every single community had a different way that their community came together about that kind of issue. And no community was the same. So we had to change it every time. And I think the Y really does that. You're in the community. I mean, the community creates the container. It creates that third place because the people there are the ones, right, influencing and having such an impact. So, I think we're talking lots about sort of like what it is that like we're all passionate about and what we see. Hopefully, folks listening will kind of, think about that and take that home. Like we all really need that third place, and it's there. It's there. It's just finding what's our third place. And within an organization like the YMCA with so many options. In college, I was really into working out, so like that's all I did. Is I would go in the morning, I would say hi to the front desk person, and I would go work out, and then years later, lo and behold, it ended up being a place that I got some of my first starts. So yeah, that third place in containers, super important when it comes to mental health and thinking about it for ourselves too, because then naturally it kind of, we don't have to do anything grand. We just have to put ourselves in spaces.
Sometimes you just get to be, and when you spoke about the pillars of being proud, when my young people do something, I go, I am so proud of you. But more than that, I want you to be proud of yourself, because I might not be there the next time you do it. So, and you said that, Nikki, as within, so without. Like if you feel it for yourself, wherever you go, you'll have that pride. I'm excited to be proud. I mean, I am proud of you, but I always say to them, it's important for you to be proud for yourself, because sometimes you're the only person that you have. And so, just to be proud that you did it, whatever. Somebody else might say it was minuscule, but for you, it was wonderful. It was better than I did yesterday or 2 days.
And programs can be a finite number of weeks, right? So there may be an end time to your mentorship, and you need to instill that in them. So I want to talk about something that has already come up, and it kind of feels like is the elephant that's going to be in the room with us for quite a while. The pandemic and its effects. And it's interesting for me, not being a mental health professional, to think about, it must have been a really interesting time for everything to kind of center toward the work that you do and how it's going to affect youth and adults going through this. So the question is, it's been years since we've been in the thick of the pandemic. What residual mental health barriers have you seen show up in your work with behavioral health?
If I can, I'm just going to jump in because I have a daughter who graduated in 2021. And so that was already it was rough.
Her whole experience, yeah.
And then she just came out of Schoolcraft College. She graduated now. Good thing she was able to graduate, because we know that right now with the war situation, there are some people who missed their high school graduation and they missed their college graduation for things that had nothing to do with them. So that leads to already, I've done this, but depression, which leads to substance abuse usage, which leads to dying by suicide and these different things. And so we have these pre-pandemic expectations in a post-pandemic world. And that right there is, Nikki, I'm gonna let you do that one, because that one right there is just like that container. We need all of that, because it's a challenge.
Yeah.
You hit the nail on the head. Is I talk about the gap. So, I worked this is like going on 20 years in mental health. And so I started out in private, like not private practice, but, seeing clients one-on-one. And over time, it's so interesting. Once 2020 hit, my whole concept of what my role in mental health, and I'm sure you guys see this too, it felt like it totally changed. I mean, it really morphed. The gap is, so like with kids, and this is true with adults too, we just don't see it as dramatically. You know how when babies are real, real young and it's so exciting, every milestone they make, we're like, oh my gosh, you rolled over. Oh my gosh, you're walking, right? Those milestones don't stop after 0 to 5, even 0 to 45, like they're still happening, but on such a micro level. But our expectations for any one person or even for ourselves sometimes doesn't take that into account. So let's say so this is a lot of my clients. I was seeing primarily teens, so middle and high school kids. And then I myself had elementary school kids. So a lot of my kids were missing their first year of college, or they were starting high school virtually, or they were doing middle school virtually, like some of the hardest points in life, just developmentally. So you've got like these, like, let's say like a 10-year-old, right? So 10-year-olds at this point, their emotional centers of their brain fully developed, just like they would be as an adult. The front part, right, the frontal cortex that sort of controls all of that emotional regulation and decision making, delayed gratification, that doesn't come into like 22, 25. So it's like giving my 6-year-old the keys to the car. It's like, we need to put some bumpers on the road. I got to be in the passenger seat. She's going to need a lot of help and guidance to manage all of that. Like, obviously, when we talk about it that way, but what happens is when, let's say if you're a 10-year-old, right? Developmentally totally normal. And like all kids, they might have different areas that are more developed and less developed. My son talked a lot, but he wasn't really doing a lot of gross motor things, but they all kind of find their way. Now, stick in something totally out of the norm. So our brain does this really fun thing where it collects information, like kind of in a file folder, old school, right? And it says, okay, here are all the typical experiences that I've had, or that I know I could have, or that I've, observed, whatever. And here are all the information I've collected on what would be typical and normal. Now, when something happens outside of that, a lot of times it can be traumatic, and we don't know why. Sometimes it, for some, it's more traumatic than others. It's just the way our brains work. But our brain goes, we don't have a folder for that. We don't have a folder for that. So it tries its best. It's like, well, maybe this one can go in here, but it's a mess, right? So now we have a problem, because now we've got kids who are developmentally here that are requiring skills of someone here because of the circumstance. Now we got a gap. So we've got a couple options, right? Either we have to take them and rise them up, right? Which is like kind of overriding every developmental element we have, or we have to take the stressor and come down. Well, it's 2020. Like, what do we do? Usually we find ourselves creating some sort of third option. We can put things within the gap that kind of serve as glue, or kind of help sort of like ease that transition, so that we're not having to do either, because that's kind of unrealistic and would drive us bonkers. But for kids, you're exactly right. That's where, in a kid brain, or a young person brain, or a young adult, or even adult brain who's struggling, the brain it just wants to feel better, and it'll put whatever it needs, whatever it has access to, not because there's anything wrong with us. Like I talk about my dad's struggle with opiates, and he just wanted to feel better. He had a broken back. Like there was no, like, it's not like he woke up one day and was like, oh, I'm going to choose this bad coping skill. No, our brains want to survive. So for kids, this is even more important. But that gap. So what I noticed, this really changed my career, to be honest. Right after 2020, I kind of launched myself into volunteering with some nonprofit organizations and people who were just out doing the work and the YMCA and delivering food and all of this, because that just felt way more, it felt like that's what that's what I needed. And I think that's what a lot of people were needing to fill that gap. We need people in there. We need situations. We need containers in there. And so a lot of my work, because a lot of kids were missing elements, right? Even to get them to that normal point. Mm-hmm. And it's hit or miss for each kid, depending on their circumstance. So a lot of kids who are growing into themselves in middle school and kind of like learning more about who they are socially missed out. So now we got to do that. And now they're, 15. Whereas that's something. So reasonable expectations is a lot of what I try to run home with parents too. Like, they really did miss out, and regardless of how they're presenting, because they probably got really good in other areas that can kind of like, make it seem like they're doing totally great. And usually, more often than not, and I think you guys might agree with me, I sometimes will worry way more about the kids or the people who look totally fine, but I know have circumstances that are stressful, as opposed to the people who are a hot mess, and I know that their situation is a mess, because that matches. I can work with that. It's right. They've developed so much of the ability to kind of like cope and mask and all of that, and just barely hold it together. Like their ability to manage that much stress, their tolerance goes skyrocket. So it doesn't take much for them. They're like in the danger zone way more of the time.
So to your point, Nikki, one of the things we say in church is, people will say all the time, I'm good, don't look like what I've been through. But let me tell you something about not looking like it. Folk don't know that you've been through some things. I'm with you. I'd rather be a hot mess express, I've been through some things, than not knowing, because people will add more things on your plate and do different, because you don't look like it and you're not showing it. Show me, that's okay. You know what I'm saying? Show me when that stuff is showing up, because then at least we get to do or help you to do something different. Right. But when you're just, everything is like, because your body's but a container. Here's what's going to happen. You 100 pounds, but you got 200 pounds of anger or stress or whatever, it's going to explode some kind of way.
Yeah.
you bump me the wrong way, you cut me off in line, like it's coming. So
Yeah.
let's
It's
teach them how to
funny.
do little by little, right? So that they're not Katie kabooming on us. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that, both of you, because just from a non-professional perspective, like in the throes of the pandemic, I have a pretty happy-go-lucky child, but the school would send surveys to set for emotional, to get the temperature of all the kids,
Right.
and you would ask these questions: how are you feeling? How does this feel? That, and good, fine, great, and all of those answers. That was when I worried, even though it was fine. But it's like, I mean, are you good? Because I'm not good. Like,
Well,
this
and
seems
would your
too
kid even
easy,
know if they weren't? Like
Right.
that's the other thing too, is like we overestimate a kid's ability to verbalize, like again, I'm talking about my 6-year-old. But we know developmentally at 6, and she's bright and she's observant. And even though, she's the quiet one in the room, but she could tell you every single person's name and last name and all that.
Oh, the quiet ones know. They listen.
Oh, like
Yeah,
she's
yeah,
the most
yeah.
observant one. Yeah, yeah. So she's like the silent observer. So because she can verbalize a lot at home with us, we have to be so careful, because she'll still, what was it last night? She wanted to be in my office, but I had to do some other things. She had to go to deal with disappointment is huge. Right. And so by anybody looking in, she's like on the floor, and she like, but really, what is the behavior telling me? It's saying like, I don't know what to do with this, because kids aren't manipulative. They're not conniving. I mean, they really are just trying to like survival, and so I have to keep that in mind all the time, that just because something looks one way on the outside, and like I was that kid, I was like, got all this together. It wasn't until I hit a point, later in life, where it was like, wow, like I can't handle any of this. This is really hard. And, thankfully had people in my life who were like, whoa, okay, here's some things you're not noticing. Like, let me help support you. But that's the other thing that we just keep an eye out on, for the people around us, and
the schools did the best that they could. But
they
here's
totally
the thing.
did. With like
How
nothing.
are you? Do you say I'm not fine when I'm at home, my mom, and I'm trapped in with these people? No, I'm not fine. But what do I say? Because these are the people I'm here with. I can't get to you. I can't get to anywhere else. So yeah, I'm fine. Because like mom and dad,
what does that mean?
They're looking over my shoulders. So I mean, I got to be fine, because this is where I am. So yeah.
Right.
Lauren, how about your experience with the Y? How has this affected your work with behavioral health?
Like Nikki, it has completely changed my career, if I'm being honest. So I was finishing up grad school when the pandemic was underway. So that was not ideal. However, why, like we've been talking about, really seize a need and we fill it. So I was also working full-time at the Y, because I have worked my way up from frontline staff to a program director to where I am now. So in response to the pandemic, we actually did run socially distanced summer camps, which I don't know if most of the viewers know anything about tiny humans, but they do not like to separate from one another.
No.
So we had to get very creative in terms of, we can still show affection to our friends, but not physically. So we're going to give them a lot of affirmations. But then even just transitioning, when you look at when we opened up our camps fully and we didn't have to be socially distanced and we didn't have to wear masks, we could really tell a difference developmentally and just with behavioral health, that the kids that were with us in 2020 were better off than the kids that were just isolated and with their parents for that whole time. And that's not to blame the parents. People were doing the best they could with what they have. And realistically, we couldn't accommodate hundreds and hundreds of children at that time.
And we didn't know what would work. Like we were,
right.
We were hoping, that this was going to be, and thank goodness.
Right. So then for the school year, we transitioned to an even more challenging program. We ran virtual learning labs for schools. We have about 40 plus school partners in Metro Detroit. We didn't run 40 plus programs, but we did run quite a few where students got to come to us from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. We fed them meals and we would do our very best to log them into their virtual learning. So that was interesting to see, because we had, for me on the front line, I had one kid over here in gym class and one kid doing music over here playing the recorder, another kid doing art. And then, you have the students where I don't know what their schedule is. So the quality of just like the education that they were getting, we were doing the best we could with what we had, but it wasn't there. So,
But Lauren, it was connection. You
Yes.
understand? It what they
And
knew that
support.
it was
Yeah,
connection,
right.
and that was so I'm just okay. Yeah.
yeah,
I tell parents all the time, I'm like, academically, I mean, that period of time, I say, let yourself off the hook,
yeah,
because at that point, that was like it was like the least important thing
Yeah.
for me. We did
Yeah.
like a learning pod. Many parents might have had this experience. Like, I was a
Mhm.
working mom, still seeing clients and things virtually, but I had like, I'm in a situation where I have 4 other moms of these little boys that we've been together with since kindergarten. So every day it was just these 5 houses. That was our little pod that we stuck with. And every day the
Right.
parents got one day to do virtual school. And I tell you what, on my day with 5 third grade boys, I would like take the temperature of the room, and I was like, okay, today we're outside. Like, emailing the teacher, and she's like, I get it. Like, people were so understanding. But yeah, it was meeting a need that you saw, like, despite the fact that we had to pivot really in school, it was there
Right.
in a framework, but it kind of had to go out the window for a minute.
Yeah. And for
Post-
us,
Post-pandemic, they love us, Nikki, as therapists. You know what I'm saying? We're the greatest thing ever. During pandemic, we learned to respect teachers more than we ever have in the world. Because before it was like, they just teachers. Now you're like,
Oh,
teachers are amazing. Because when you are stuck with your kids and other people's kids, you're like, this
Possible
no,
job now.
no.
It's an
Yeah.
impossible job. It's
and also, I felt like badly for my kid's teacher because she was hilarious and the kids didn't get her jokes. And I sat in the back laughing while they were on Zoom. And I was like, if you have your whole life telling these great lines and nobody's laughing, I see you.
That's right.
I just want you to know I heard
Like
it.
Bugs Bunny wasn't for kids. Adults will be like,
Exactly. So,
We need that.
God, this is such an incredible discussion, and I'm so excited to have y'all here because, like Melanie said, I don't have to really do much work, but we do have to get on to the next question. So, thinking about generational mental health, how do you, as a clinician, navigate working through the different barriers that each generation brings to their treatment goals?
Mhm. Can I start? Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So this is kind of like what I was talking about earlier, is that everybody's experience is, I mean, really, we have to think about that, profoundly different, the walk that we walk. And so it's so important, things that feel easy for us or effortless or positive could be the complete opposite for somebody else. And then it kind of ties into this concept of generational trauma, which is real. That's a real thing. We're cellular. We're, we can look at all of the science behind it, but we are accumulation of every generation that's come before us. And if we really, I mean, that's kind of profound, right? But it also means that our systems have developed to this point too. So now we're going to respond differently to stressors or to anxiety. It might manifest differently again, right? Just depending on our generational line. And so really having to take and be sensitive and take into account, not just like this person in front of me or this child in front of me or whoever it is that I'm trying to support is coming in with this, but this has so much behind it. So the solution might not be, A plus B equals C. We really have to look a little bit deeper. Where do the values and the meaning lie? How, some things will sort of evolve over time for families, because for them, there are things that maybe are normal, culture expected, things that, just any of those, a multitude of things could impact not just their experience of whatever the current stressor is, but also what intervention or the helpful thing could be. So I think as clinicians, we're always trying, it's never, I mean, now more than ever, it's never, ever one size fits all. And so I've been taking a very curious approach. It's really heightened my awareness and sort of the focus and importance on just being really curious. I try to assume everybody is doing the very best they can with what they have. And for some of us, that looks a lot less messy than others. But, do I know that if I was walking that walk and that journey, that I wouldn't do the same thing? Can't tell you that. Probably would, so kind of taking that into account, meeting people where they're at. So curiosity has really helped me. I think too, like allowing my clients or the kiddos that I see to lead, has also been really neat. So like different interventions and things. I mean, I'm so lucky to have access to the community that I do. I'm here in Walled Lake. So like we're surrounded by all these, like different cool organizations. We have YMCA in Farmington down the road. We have Worlds of Hope for Life. We have all these great things. And so when we think about even things like tragedy, so we kind of had a unique experience with Words of Hope for Life to be able to go. I grew up in Lake Orion, so Orion, Oxford, like that is my home base. So a lot of in right after the tragedy at Oxford High School, because I just know so many of those teachers, we were able to go in and do post-trauma support for those high school kids in the days and the weeks following the tragedy. And that, especially in a post-2020 era, the support and the things that they needed, so different, in their experience of living in a small town. I happened to grow up there, so like I kind of knew, but if you really have to have a sense of where this person is coming from, and it's kind of like a continuous positive regard, really being curious and understanding why one struggle might look one way for someone and different for someone else. I really believe that we all have the answers inside. And so as clinicians and therapists, I'm just a sounding board. I'm just helping get the conversation going. I'm not providing any answers or solutions, but I think as clinicians, we get really good at help finding the meaning.
You get a chance to help them to draw it out.
Yeah. And they kind of draw their...
They will go down a rabbit hole of what if this happens? And what if, and I let them, I'm like, yeah.
Yes.
And then at the end I go, but what if that is the most amazing? It's like, what? We don't know.
Yeah.
But what, COVID, I know we're talking about generational, what it became, especially in the African-American community. Let me just tell you about what I know. It became a great equalizer because we always, as older, look, because that's what I said and do what I said and do whatever. But COVID and this, it allowed young people to come to they don't have to be at the kid table anymore while we're at the adult table. We better get a different table that we can offer, because they had to help us do so many things that we didn't know how to do. And they
That's
were like,
so true.
You need us to help you with social. We got this. We go, and we like, well, no, we're not. Church.
Yeah.
Fundamental. Everybody went to church. When we had to start doing church online, it was like, and how do you do it? And how do you get the seniors connected? But guess who did it? It was the grandchildren, the young people. So we learned the value in each other.
It's like the wisdom, right? The wisdom that we, regardless
and we learned it wasn't just the elders who had the wisdom, that everybody had something to bring to the table. And so we started valuing, young folk and the folk in between. And it wasn't just, it was like, okay. It became an equalizer. It's like, I know you the mama, you the whatever, but guess what?
I've got something I can bring.
And that was a good thing.
Yeah, I think that's more and more kind of like a really important thing to keep in mind. And I know the YMCA does this. Yeah. Words of Hope for Life, we do this in kind of a different way. So we have like a youth advisory council, and they are middle and high school kids that, like, nothing that we do is not either kid directed or, the world records that we break. Those all came from kid brains. And I really think that this generation, if you have any experience working with kids, or just you have a kid, they are just cut different. Like these kids,
and they do things. We do everything from an intellectual and whatever, and they just kind of. And then the thing, I'll just tell the story of years ago. You remember when the truck was stuck under the bridge, and they called every mechanic. It was like, you have to blow up part of the bridge and take up whatever. And for kids just to say, flatten the tires and pull it out.
Let the air out of the tires. Yeah.
Because what they know is, I done got this stuck on my mother's table before. I had to flatten and pull it out so it wouldn't break her. But we were talking about blowing up bridges, and it's going to be $1 million to replace this. And literally our brains, engineers were like, yes, that's, and then a kid was like, flatten the tire and pull it out. Like, how perfect is that? But that didn't even fit our scheme. And that was like, that, what?
Okay. Well, it really, like, we do not have the same, our brains have developed completely different.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting. And it kind of, like, as adults, I think it calls us to have real recognition for that. I think they just need, the platform and the support. I think that's our generation's job, is to really provide that. But I love what you said about, like, the great equalizer. I mean, really and truly, I think that had so much value. It reminded me, so like the truck under the bridge, when we were doing this data collection, right? We were asking kids about if there was a task force in Oakland County that was for the opioid epidemic, who do you think would be on there? So they asked they first did the survey with adults, right? And so 127 adults, and they found, people were saying things like, well, a therapist for sure, maybe someone in the police force, maybe someone who does hope not handcuffs, maybe, like they were naming all these things, like maybe a medical director. You know what the kid said? Somebody who's on opioids, somebody who's addicted. How about somebody's family? How about their daughter? It's just like almost 80% of those. 0% of the adults said that, 80% of the kids.
So because restorative is to do it with. We're so much wanting to do it for, you know what I'm saying, or to. Restorative is like, we're going to do it with the people that it impact.
Yes, there's a hyper independence that we came from that sort of like is this like fun little workaholic something that we now a lot of us deal with, what we can produce in our meeting being so tied to that. And I think we really can learn for ourselves about that, but I don't think these kids are going to have it. Like, I really think that that's going to be more the message that we can, in community connection. I cannot, when people say like, oh, I don't think my kid needs therapy, and most kids, like a lot of kids don't, they just need, a well-rounded support system in their life. So if parents are saying like, well, I want to make sure my kid's okay, and I'm worried, blah, blah, but just get them connected. You get connected. If you're connected, it's going to naturally trickle down. Find what fills you. And I promise you that that's going to trickle down to them. That's the best thing really that you can do. Therapy's great. I'm totally biased because I do it, but I really think that is the kind of practical advice that'll move us into, the next generation for sure.
Lauren, I see your hand. Jump in.
I'm just like, yes, everything you're saying is 100% accurate. I mean, for me at the Y specifically, it's a little bit more challenging to dig into the nitty gritty of like what is coming generationally. But like Nikki's saying, like these kids are built different. If you were to look at the campers that I served as an 18-year-old camp counselor versus the ones we're serving now, our approaches even are completely different. And we're leading with more compassionate accountability, more empathy, and not like that old school, Melanie, to what you're saying, do what I say when I say it. And we're connecting with them. And our youth have a voice in making their community and setting the expectations of what do we want to feel in this program? What do we want it to look like? What don't we want it to look like? And they sign a contract weekly to go over that. And that's really student and camper led, which also makes it easier to hold compassionate accountability because, hey, we all agreed on this as a group. So can we talk about how we can get whatever's on the outside of this contract to get back in? Because we really want you as a valuable part of our community here.
Love that.
I want you to know that all of you did extra credit and answered the next question without it being asked. Because and it's kind of interesting because it's around something that we talk about a lot in our diversity, inclusion, equity, and global committee, which is bias. And really to tackle that intergenerational bias is listening and making space for all generations input and in the work that we do. And I was just saying this yesterday, I am sad that I have been with the Y for over 15 years, and every year I still relearn the invite young people to the table lesson, right? If like you're doing programming for young people, why aren't they here talking about what that program should be, right?
Well, I think too, Margaret, that looks different every year. And so we need to continue to be innovative and to just find the need in the community. I think, I know you've been in on conversations with me before. We've talked about how we need to get more out of our buildings. And to speak on what Nikki's saying, we need to be more into the community and talking to the people that maybe they don't come to our buildings and maybe they would benefit from our services. So I think that looks different every year because it certainly looks different for me.
Absolutely. So then we move on to how do we destigmatize and support our own mental health and that of others as individuals or as a community or even with your organizations?
I will say in my role at the Y, I'm very transparent. I am your regional behavior and mental health director. I'm a therapist on the side, and I'm also in therapy. And I also take medication because it's normal for people to struggle and to just have it be normal. Like I'm a full supporter of therapy. Obviously, Nikki, like you, I'm totally biased, but just normalizing it and making people know like, hey, even the people that do this for a living have to benefit from it in some ways. That's like, I think about it as, why would we assume that doctors don't go see other doctors? So just making it like that, like it's the same thing.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of fits, it can fit differently for different people. I process verbally. So therapy for me is like critical. Props to Ryan, my therapist. But, like I really need that sometimes because as a human on the planet, we can intellectualize so much and we miss so many things. So for me, like having a sounding board is so helpful because I will get stuck. I will get stuck in here. And I just know that about myself. Not for everybody. It doesn't work like that for everybody, but I think that, more to what you're saying, Lauren, it's really, I think, and we really, the whole motivation behind me even starting a community nonprofit was this idea of like, the one-to-one is powerful and will always be needed, but it's the one-to-many that we've always had a hard time kind of hitting in a meaningful way. But I really think, and I really try to take an optimistic view, I really think that everything that's happened in the past handful of years really has opened up opportunity for that to happen more. So Lauren, like you're saying, open about it, like I don't hide anymore. I used to hide that I'm in therapy or that I take medication or that, that I have really mentally ill parents and family members that really struggle. More honesty provided more connection for me. And then that ended up a trickle effect. So that was really, really powerful, like personally. But I really think that it's more about what do we create in communities that are supportive of the things that we want to come out of it? Like you were saying earlier, like, the programs, what do we want to feel? What do we want to get out of this? What do we want, this program to be? And you're working together with the kids to do that. Even in a bigger sense, as we work on a community level, what do we want to see here? Do we need more connection to resources? That's where ViewFest came in. Like we developed things that were meeting bigger needs to create the situation where the change could happen. And I think that's a lot of what mental health, it's kind of like being creative and like going in the side door. Like if we go in the front door, like if I had a mental, I would learn this time and time again. I tell people, I'm going to have a mental health event. Everyone come. Like nobody's coming, especially not the kids. There has to be meaning and value behind it, So like we take this really unique approach to getting communities engaged rather than just taking like I'm going to hit this target area. We try to hit, generationally. Well, what could we do? How can we make that happen? Oh, maybe we're breaking a world record together. It's a container. I didn't have to say anything about mental health. And lo and behold, like we did this huge, Lauren was part of this, we have the longest continuous line of postcards, which was a kid created kindness project. And that experience, which is a lot of like the same concept that the Y does, which is we're not like, there was no behavioral health, there was no mental health treatment that happened there, but it was a container that created all of the elements and opportunities that we wanted to see happen. And then we just stood back, right? We were just part of it. So I think a lot of moving forward and breaking the stigma is really just rewriting the infrastructure, if that makes sense.
And it's about being about what you talk about.
Yeah.
And so for young people, they see what you do.
Yeah.
So I know for years, I lived right next door to where I worked. I lived right next door to Easter Seals, literally one driveway to the next. So what I would do is I would just park my car, because it would not even a whole song. I'd park my car and I'd just sit out there and just let me relax for a minute. Because what I would tell my kids is I don't want you to catch something that doesn't belong to you. This is a lot of work stuff and you're going to add, it's going to whatever. So what I do now is there's a park on the corner of my house. My daughter is 20, but I'll go to that park and just hang out. So when we only had the one car, she has her own car now. So she'll say, I'm going to go down to the park. I go to meditation each week where I leave my phone. Everybody sits up in the chair. I lay down. I put my blanket on. I wrap myself up. But I show them what it looks like. You understand? And so that makes a difference. And you need to go to therapy. You need to, and you should. And I tell people, don't should on me. Don't tell me what I should or should.
I love that.
Let me do what works for me. And so when they see it and they see, okay, that's working because mommy is kinder. She's a nicer, whatever. Then they understand the value of it.
And the purpose of when they get that way,
we're therapists, but we're not going to go to therapy. We're not going to talk to therapists. What does that look like? I mean, really, what does it look like?
Well, I'll be honest. I am terrible at this. I'm still working so hard because there was this idea ingrained that if I'm not produced, like whatever I produce is the only thing that I am valuable for. And so now unlearning that requires me to take care of myself in a way that I hadn't before. I was just assuming that I had like, I was a robot or something. Like I could just keep going and going, but like but everybody else couldn't. They had to slow down. And it's like 2020 was a huge dose of reality, even for me. And I'm still working on that, because what it comes down to is we're talking about teaching personal boundaries to our kids for self-protection. Right. And so like there's a lot of messages about, that sort of override that need of saying no. Right. I love saying yes. It could be all this positive, whatever.
Right.
But saying no when I need to is what protects me and actually makes more of an impact. Right. So, oh my gosh. Yeah. And
it's a sacredness in saying no. You know what I'm saying? That Brene Brown, clear is kind. No, I can't do it. Unclear is unkind. I'm going to try. Let me, it's not, no, I can't. No, I'm not going to be able to do it this time, but I would love to support any other way I can. Or how do you do, you know what I mean? Yeah, just clear as kind. And we want to say yes because we want the praise that comes with it or whatever. When it works out, it's going to be, and then you are like tired to the bone. It's like, no, I can't do that. Because I'd rather give you my all than just a little piece, these little snippets of me.
Right.
So if you can believe it, I mean, this has been like the quickest period of time of all time. Like this discussion has flown by. We have a few minutes left. And I'm going to put Lauren on the spot really quickly to share like, how does the Y support mental health, and are there any resources that the Y has for people?
Yeah. So like I was saying earlier, like the pandemic totally changed my career, but I think the Y at Metro Detroit as a whole, we really were identifying the need for more mental health supports and programs. And me being a person who is passionate about that all along, kind of was obnoxiously advocating for that. So with that, I was able to implement these just like boots on the ground interventions that were easy for 18, 19-year-old staff to do to support these kids, to make them feel seen, heard, connected, proud. With that, we had a drastic decrease in unwanted behaviors and more youth satisfaction when we had our surveys for our program. So that was great, obviously. It made my job easier and it made the program more fun. So that's what I love. So with that, I guess Farmington was kind of the pilot, and then we were able to expand that out. So now I do have a director under me that works a lot, boots on the ground, and I'm doing more policy work. But she writes behavior plans for all the kids that we get intake packets on. So we will run reports based on who's registered for all of our after school programs in the 42 sites, or our day camps, or our early learning center. And we ask straight-based questions to the parents about their kids' behavior and their strengths, instead of just saying, are there any behavioral considerations that we should be aware of?
Yep.
Changing that has been absolutely a game changer in the way that we operate our programs. We are able to see, okay, this kid struggles with impulse control or separation anxiety. So we're able to put in some preventative strategies to help support them. And it's really been great this year because we're calling those parents and proactively saying, hey, we read your intake paperwork. We put a plan together. We would like to review it with you and get your feedback on it. And we're training our staff on that this year. So when kids come through our doors at camp, they know that they're supported and have a plan in place. So that has been really good. We also have a pretty robust partnership with Words of Hope for Life that we're working through. So I'll let Nikki speak to this a little bit, but we are sponsoring ViewFest for the second year. And yeah, I'll give you the plug to talk about ViewFest.
Well, this is a great segue, because I was going to open the floor. One of the things I love about working at the Y is we don't have a monopoly on helping people. And one of the things I love about this series is we usually take the time to point out all of the good work in the community and people that are doing this, and resources for those that are listening beyond the Y. So if anyone would like to share, great resources, events, recommendations for what we've talked about, please.
Nikki, I'm going to go and then I'm going to let you go, because you got like this is wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
What happens right now is we allow people to be in the roles that they are. We allow parents to be parents. We allow teachers to be teachers. But what I ask for parents and just adults, period, is to allow therapists or mental health experts to be that. Because sometimes as parents, kids will say some things and we go, "What? Listen, if you can't listen to what someone has lived through, it's not fair for them." You understand? So send them to somebody who can listen, who can understand, and help them work through that. sometimes as parents, we go, no, we did all of this for that. That don't mean it worked for them. So send them to somebody who can listen to what they lived through. They deserve that. And so whatever that looks like, it might not be the teacher because they're not therapists necessarily. They've had to be. It might not be the parents, but send them to the professionals who can do that.
That's great.
The communities, churches within communities are a huge
Yes.
wealth of support for a lot of
Yep.
folks. And I think that that's another really great, thing and why this is so valuable to have you here too. I think that's just huge.
Any other organizations, resources that we want to shout out as great for those listening?
Yes. So the
I can
YMCA is
think of one.
amazing. We all know this. Like I said, Lauren's phenomenal in so many things. And one of the things that she's really taken hold of is finding really impactful things for the Y to get their hands in. So for years now, Lauren has been such a huge part of that for us at Words of Hope for Life. And, giving insight and direction to our board of directors and just like so many incredible things. We have a brick and mortar in Commerce, this space called The Rail. It's this old vape shop that us and the kids like took and turned into this really funky hangout spot. We use that now as the home base for ViewFest, which is our premier event of the year. It was born out of, now I'm going to show my age for sure. I'm an 80s baby, but for anyone who remembers Warped Tour.
I mean,
Lauren,
I didn't know that. What?
Oh, you didn't know so this is like the short origin story of ViewFest. So every year we do this at the Detroit Zoo. This year it's July 14th. This is free. So we fundraise all year long to make sure that we remove every barrier for folks getting to this event. And I'll tell you why. So the event's free. We're covering everybody's admission to the zoo and attendance to our event. My dream years ago, this is the fourth time we've done it, but years ago, it was like, what if we had an event that was like Warped Tour? So it was this alternative music tour. Vans and the shoe brand were they were kind of the spearhead of the event, and they brought in, this is like in the 90s, right? So there was skateboarders, and this was all new, and so bands would come, bands that are huge now. We're on these mini stages, but there was such a unique community that came together every year, and it was people from all different walks of life. And I think it was my first time experiencing like the community within the music community. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. It doesn't matter who I am. We have this shared, thing that really helps and brings us a lot of support and, connection. So I thought, wow, just going to that every year meant so much to me. Like, what if there was an event you could just go to and it would just improve your health by going? Like, you could have the benefit and you wouldn't even necessarily have to do anything. You have to show up. And so that's sort of how ViewFest evolved. So now we have the largest mental health festival in the States at the Detroit Zoo. The whole goal is removing barriers for access. So the YMCA is a huge partner. You'll see them up on our billboards and all of our fun stuff because they're just so phenomenal at helping make this happen. I mean, literally paying for tickets for people to come. Over 200 resources, all within our community, the Tri-Counties. So these are vetted resources. I think a lot about, like, my friends can call me and say, Nikki, I need a X, Y, or Z. But like, what if you don't have a Nikki? Like, everybody should have access. You should never have to go blind online and just like hope you're going to get the resource you need. And a lot of folks I find don't know what they don't know. So the people who are accessing our event are everybody from every walk of life, people who just want to come have a fun day at the zoo, and also folks who really want to find and make connections within their community. So we provide that, the things you might never even know existed, entities that you might never knew had something for you will be there and be present. We ask them each to bring to the table something of value for every attendant. So either it's going to be an experience or something you can take away. And I mean, this is like, we take over that whole zoo. So like the whole area by the fountain, we bring in the Oakland County stage and have people, doing all kinds of fun things through the day. But the cool part, so there are all these fun experiences and, all this stuff's free. We provide this because this is removing barriers. And the thing we know is that any more than 3 steps to access help, especially when you're struggling, it's not going to happen. So with transportation, I mean, we're working hard to make sure everybody can get there. You've got to register for a ticket. So you're going to go to viewfest2024.com. It's free though. So we just need to know that you're coming. And the
You
really
beat me to it. I was gonna.
makes
I'm sorry.
us-
We got to wrap up. We're running out of time here, my dear. I'm
Yeah.
sorry about
So
that.
come out that day.
Uh,
This year we're breaking another world record, but you'll have to go on
July
and see this.
14th, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And what was the website again?
Yep, viewfest2024.com.
Viewfest2024.com. Be sure to register and attend this incredible event. I have to thank each and every one of you, Nikki, Melanie, and Lauren, for being such a fantastic panel. I had such a great time talking to all of you today. We also need to thank our new CEO, Parrish Underwood, for supporting the work that we do in these community conversations and with the DIG committee. And also, I would like to do a special thank you to Ariel Wilkerson, who is the Association Director of Diversity, Inclusion, Equity Global. You didn't see her, but she made almost all of this possible today. As well as what we call the DIG committee here at the Y for igniting this wonderful conversation. It's been a kind of life-changing experience for me to be part of that work at the Y, and I'm so proud that we have put such importance on this diversity, inclusion, equity, global work. So thank you all for being with us today. For those of you who watched, for those of you on the panel, you rock, and have a great rest of your day and a wonderful holiday weekend.